Well, as days pass, it still is very difficult to articulate both the circumstances and the grief surrounding the passing of Queen Elizabeth. Scotland has been a cesspool of division over monarchs since the 13th century. Yet there was a simple oak coffin draped in the royal standard of Scotland in the back of a hearse, and the body of Elizabeth II, the longest reigning British monarch, was being driven past mourners who lined the streets for hours in their thousands. As King Charles has called it, it is her last great journey. The Edinburgh Royal Mile, which I know well, is like the high streets in most English towns, but it's bigger. It runs from the famed Edinburgh Castle to the gates of Holyrood, the Scottish home of the British monarch. People spilled out everywhere, and those in flats above the shops hung out of windows. Heads were bowed, some cried. As Rob Harris beautifully puts it, quote, "Fathers stood with daughters, sons comforted mothers, and smartphones were thrust towards the sky. Children held up their Paddington bears. If you were not moved, you had no soul," unquote. In the 6-hour journey from Balmoral to Edinburgh, in parts, farmers formed a guard of honour on their tractors. And then there's Princess Anne. What a woman. A no-nonsense woman. The Queen's only daughter, her face etched with grief. She'd been by her mother's side for her final days. She'd accompanied the Queen's coffin on its 6-hour journey from Balmoral Castle to Edinburgh. At the Palace of Holyrood, Princess Anne was at the front of a reception party. How she managed, I've no idea. As her mother's coffin was carried in, she curtsied deeply, looking devastated. Princess Anne, an Olympian in her own right, whose beautiful daughter Zara won a silver medal at the Olympics in 2012, magnificent horsewomen, an interest she had in common with her mother. But this was a different world for the distraught Princess Anne. To take her mother, the Queen, from her beloved Scottish Balmoral Castle 6.5 hours to Edinburgh was anyone's definition of traumatic. She'd been with her mother since her health deteriorated rapidly last Thursday, along with Charles. She was at her mother's bedside for the final hours. King Charles had wanted his sister to look after their mother in her final farewell. That she's doing it with immense dignity and unsurpassed emotional control is an extraordinary thing. Anne was always close to the Queen, and it's understood she helped the Balmoral gamekeepers and staff select the white flowers, including the Queen's favourite sweet peas, for the wreath that was placed on top of the coffin. The heavy oak casket bearing the Queen had been made for Elizabeth more than 30 years ago, made from English oak at Elizabeth's request. Most people don't have their coffin, I know, made decades before they die, but for the Queen, no one was taking any chances.